Hi, I'm here today to talk about the Chrysler Turquoise colors used on the big blocks for Chrysler products from 1962 until the 1970 model year when they transitioned to the more of a true blue color. These would have been on 361s, 383s, 413s, 440s, any big block basically that wasn't any sort of like high performance, special engine in that era where they would have had a different color. So this would include pretty much all C body big blocks, some B bodies, and A bodies where you had a big block as well. So I have a 1966 Plymouth Fury 3 with a 3D3 4 barrel. It's the Commando V8 from the factory. It was ordered that way. So being a 4 barrel car, it's a little bit more of a high performance car than you typically would have gotten in a Fury, but it had the Chrysler Turquoise color. This car in question was built at the Belvidere plant, and I bought it off the original owner with 49,000 original miles and was unrestored. Ended up having to do a motor rebuild because the car had sat for about 10 years, and in that time some mice had gotten into the engine and made a nest down in the cylinders. So as obviously I'm putting it back together, I wanted to repaint the motor with fresh colors, and I wanted to try and get it as true as possible because this is really a survivor car. And what I started out with actually was this can here, which is a little bit older, but it was stored down in the basement where it's nice and cool. And I actually had two of these, and they sprayed out the same, shook them really well, and actually went on pretty nice. I'm not sure how this is going to show in the video, but the cap's actually kind of almost a minty green in color. And when it sprayed out on the engine, it was maybe just a little darker than that, but definitely had some green to it. As it cured over the next couple days, I'll go show you right now, the motor ended up becoming much more blue. It still has some green tinge to it, which again, I don't know if we'll show in the video, but is far from what the cap color was. So being that I ran out of this and you can't get this exact paint anymore, my options were to try and see if the superseded Mopar Performance paint was the same, but you have to buy 6 at a time in a case. That was quite pricey, and I'd read that people thought it was the wrong shade. So I started looking around at what alternatives I had, and after doing a lot of reading online, Bill Hirsch was what was recommended. Well, what they're recommending was Chrysler Turquoise, of course, it would make sense, and a lot of people were happy with it. I looked at pictures, and well, pictures are very difficult to tell online, but I took a look and I thought that was the route to go. So I ordered some cans of that, and I sprayed it out, and, well, this is the Bill Hirsch here on the end. It's probably more green than it should be, but the biggest thing is it's really dark. It's not correct at all, at least as far as I'm concerned. Now, when I talk to them, they claim they've been making this since the 80s, and it's based on some original parts, but to be honest, I don't know, maybe they got a bad batch or something, because it just doesn't look right. So then I started looking at more alternatives while I was talking to them about what to do. And I went out and I was going to buy the VHT because a lot of people talked about that being pretty close. And they said it's easy to get. Well, I start looking around and everywhere is sold out of the VHT. So I ended up contacting them, and they said it's been discontinued, and the parent company that makes VHT also makes Duplicolor, and they said a certain Duplicolor was a direct replacement for it. Well, the one in question is this one. They call it either Chrysler Green or Chrysler Blue. I forget what it's actually called. But this one also ended up being too blue. It's got a little green tint to it, but not much. So I wasn't really quite happy with that. And then at the same time, I also bought a couple others people suggested that were close. So this one here is actually Ford Green, and then this one is Alpine Detroit Diesel Green. All three are consecutive Duplicolor numbers. When you look them up, I forget what those are offhand, but they're 3 consecutive numbers. The Ford Green was just a little too green, probably about the right shade as far as light or dark, but too green. And the Detroit Diesel Green was a little too light and still too green. So I also had bought here Mancini branded paint, which is turquoise, and the cap more or less looks turquoise. And that one also turned out, that's almost more like the 70s blue than the turquoise in my opinion. So there's all of those compared to each other. Now over here, I got a few original parts for reference. I have the torque converter, and again, I don't know how the color's coming through on the video, but this definitely has a very green tint in it. It's a very turquoise. Bracket, that's a different part of the engine, and then this bolt from the flywheel. And part of the reason I got these parts here is because it seems that the top of the motor sees a lot more heat and discoloration and grease and stuff like that, whereas obviously something like a flywheel bolt, that hasn't seen somebody repainting. It hasn't seen as much of the elements or grease or anything of the sort. And those three pieces are pretty consistent together as far as the shading. And there's, definitely a balance of green and blue there, and a good turquoise color. So what Bill Hirsch ended up recommending was they had a sample of Pontiac turquoise they were going to send me. I figured, why not, let them send that. And I got the sample, and it turned out it was a really good match to what I was looking for. So they traded me cans of my unused Chrysler Turquoise for what is their Pontiac Turquoise 57 and 58, this number here. And I sprayed some of that out, and I got these components here. I got the valley pan is kind of coated and has a nice color to it. And if you look at, say how this color comes out and matches, even if the camera is not picking up the exact shading here properly, you can see that the color pretty well matches what the side of this torque converter is here. And then that color, I'll take both an original piece and the Pontiac. You can see just for reference here, compared to what the Mopar Performance was when I first sprayed it out after it's set. So in my opinion, and what I'm going to be going with, is the Chrysler, or the Pontiac Turquoise from Bill Hirsch. I think that's the best match. If I had to pick a second right now out of all these that I have here, I would say probably the Mopar Performance was the next closest out of all of them. Additional ones that you could try, if you can either get your hands on the VHT, you could try that. The Herbs restorations, I did not try their brand of paint. And I did not try the newest Mopar Performance paint that's out there. Just note that the Mopar Performance paint has changed part numbers twice. It's the same part number as this, but they have different letters at the end of it. And I don't know if that's simply for a supplier change or a shade change, but supplier change could also end up meaning that it has changed shades, just because of the new source. But those would be kind of the other options, short of going and having something custom mixed, which was just about going to be my next step. So I hope this video helps somebody, because I spent several months and obviously some money buying paint and time spraying it out. So hopefully this helps someone else accurately repaint their Mopar Big Block.